All right, and we are live once again this week. Hello, good evening, everyone. Hello, good evening, everyone. No, it's okay. I'm slightly overly hyped. I am very tired. My apologies for not doing due diligence and putting out a poll this week. It's been very busy, both home and work. But enough of all that. How are you, fine for people?
Doing great.
Not bad.
Good. Kelly, Roland, Justin, more disc golf?
Yeah. I shot a -3 today. One of my best rounds in the last 2 or 3 years.
Nice.
So,
what's a -3? What does that mean?
have you ever watched golf? How they score, and if they get under par, they're doing better. So
yes,
the lower
and it's
their
very
score, the
confusing. Well, okay, yes,
Par is like a difficulty level, so if they say you should finish this hole in 3 strokes, that's par. But if you're so good you finish it in 2 strokes, you get like what is it? One minus.
That's
you get like a minus
that's
1.
one
You
under
get
par.
-1. Yeah, you get -1 as a score. So Ɩnternational was so good, he did better than average
most
by a good chunk.
Yeah.
That is my analysis.
Scored backwards?
No, it's not scored backwards. It's each hole has like a par, so it's like you should get like you have 3 shots to get this thing in order to get like a 0 score. But if you get it in 2, then you get a -1. If you somehow got a hole in 1, you get like a minus.
But she's saying it's backwards in that the negative points is better, where you could have easily have scored it as on a par 4. If you make a birdie on a par 4. You can get 2 points for that, but that's just not how they did it.
Think of it as debt. You don't want a lot of money owed in your debt. You want them to owe you money. So.
Nice to see you. That's a new friend.
The course I go to, the par for all 18 holes is 66. So they expect you to throw the frisbee 66 times to shoot par. And I shot the frisbee today 62 times, or 63 times, because I shot -3. So
you're a pro now.
Score. Oh, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all.
The pros can just flattering you. The pros can just throw the disc and it just goes through all of the loops in one throw. Right, Ɩnternational? That's how pro
maybe. Well, no, the biggest things the pros have is distance. Yeah. Like the farthest I've ever thrown the frisbee is 280, 290 feet. There's some pros out there that are throwing at 600 feet. Right, so accurately, that's the thing, right? So when you can do that, it takes a lot less strokes to get from the tee to the basket. So like Paul Macbeth, he's the #1 player in the world. Paul Macbeth, the course I come to, I go play on a regular basis. He's been here and played this course, and the couple of times he's played it, he's usually around -12 from the long tees.
Oh wow.
And I just play from the regular short tees. So, I mean, the long tees add an extra 10 strokes onto my game every time I try and play for them.
Well, you're getting active. I like it. Who else is getting active?
I'm doing Krav Maga. I even got my Krav Maga shirt on.
You are. And okay. Normalize
But I've been sassed by, I don't know if everyone knows who student Dr. Ben is, but he's been sassing me and saying like, oh, Krav Maga is not evidence-based. You should do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm just like, all right, whatever.
Doesn't matter. Okay, normalizing atheism is trying to work for a wrench. Thank you, appreciate it. You're getting ahead of me. I make announcements towards the end, sir. But yes, Kelly, our dear lovely Kelly, is going to be on Truth Wanted tomorrow night.
I am.
Way to go, Kelly.
Yeah, I feel pretty honored.
I'll give you a discount clap.
Is that a discount?
Yeah, I feel it's like a dream come true for me. So it's probably my favorite show on the ACA. So this is like a dream come true for me.
Yeah, I feel like it's the perfect one for people to pop in and challenge you on rock stuff.
Yeah. Give them a disc golf clap, but don't ever give them a disc golf.
You can use that same argument against a lot of really weird paranormal stuff too. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed we get some good callers tomorrow.
Yes, because I know classically Truth One is all about the hokey pokey. Really?
Paranormal conspiracies.
Thank you. Which is, like the hokey pokey. So can you give us a little preview of what you may start to talk about, just to get some callers rolling on in?
Well, I would probably like to talk about the way that energy is used among the metaphysical people and how it doesn't mean what they think it means. You know, they'll always say, I feel energy coming off of this crystal, but the definition of energy, and I'd like to talk about this, is the capacity to do work. If it's doing work, you can measure the amount of work that it's doing. And if the crystal is giving off energy, we should be able to measure the work that crystal is doing if it's giving off energy. And we can't. Yeah. And I'm not even sure what the energy is even doing when it's emanating off the crystal. So that we can measure.
If they have a crystal where they feel the energy radiating off of it, they need to put that down immediately.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Right. And there was a study done in University of London. They didn't publish it, but they presented it at a World Psychology Conference. They presented the findings. And they had taken two groups of people and given one real crystals, and the other group got acrylic crystals. And both groups were told they could feel the power coming from the crystals. And the same amount of people with the acrylic crystals felt the energy as did with the real crystals, which leads us to believe that the whole thing is just power suggestion. So
it sounds like the beginning of every Final Fantasy game.
Kind of.
Sounds about
Is that how that starts? Is that how that works?
Big Mama Crystal calls upon you to go save the world or something. That's all I know from Final Fantasy 14, which is the only Final Fantasy game I've ever played, unless you count Kingdom Hearts, which is like Final Fantasy Light.
Okay, room full of nerds. Got it.
Yep.
Jena, have you not realized this? We had an impromptu D&D game on this.
God, don't remind me.
Yeah, right.
So much fun.
Speaking of it, everybody roll for.
Mikey's not in the stream.
We're unionizing. Our demands are at least one D&D a month.
God, you know what? We need. Well, I'll just say that for later, but we'll talk about it. But anyways, what was in the news this week? I feel like I'm at a loss of a lot of things. Before we roll into the main topic,
is there anything specific
what's his name? The billionaire made it into space this week, right?
Oh yeah, that
Oh yes, thank you.
I saw something
Virgin
where he didn't
guy.
really get. I heard he didn't really get into space. He just kind of went into like the upper atmosphere or something. But
yeah,
right.
So it depends on who and which agency and which country you're talking about. There's no official designation of what determines whether you went to space or not. So I think the U.S. is only one of the only countries, I should say, that will give you your recognition for going into space for hitting the I think it's 50 kilometers.
Isn't that the same height that the Red Bull guy jumped from?
No.
He used balloons to get himself up.
Okay, so it's 50 miles, 80 kilometers. The FAA sets the boundary of space to 50 miles. Now they do this for it. There's a legal distinction between a spacecraft and an aircraft, and they set this height for that legal distinction. I think he made it to 56 or 58 on this flight. Mm-hmm. And then there's a big rivalry with Elon Musk because they're going to 62, which is I don't know how to pronounce it, the Von Karman line, which is 62 miles, which is internationally regarded as the height in which you go into space, or the distance from the surface here. So, I mean, for, practical purposes, he went to space. I mean, the view is going to be very, very similar. They still experience several minutes of near zero gravity, weightlessness. Yeah. It's just the title can be disputed.
So did he whip Elon Musk's butt?
He got there first. Jeff Bezos is next. He's going up next week sometime, right?
Yeah.
All the billionaires going to space and just leave them there.
Well, they're pioneering a new industry, is what they're doing. I mean, these are commercial space tourism. I mean, these are the cruise liners of outer space.
Basically, yes. Yeah.
That ship that he went up on, it was all windows. It was designed so that you can have a view. Right? So.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you want to view?
Yes, but I'd also like solid metal around me instead of glass.
I mean, if you want to just, be all like, I don't want to die, but okay, I still want to see a view. Anyways, thanks for sharing. I remember coming home and actually my sister had it on and I watched it live. So I was like, oh, yeah, that's happening. So it was cool. I won't say how I was feeling as I was watching it. But yeah, it was intense. It was cool. I thought it was cool, but thank you. So bridging more and more, because it seems like we're talking about a lot of philosophical ideas and topics, which, mind you, I'm not a person that likes philosophy, but I still will open myself up to learning. And one of those main philosophical stances is humanism. We all kind of have our own subjective idea or definition of us, either ourselves being actual humanists or what being a humanist is. Basic for me, just recently, just understanding and learning that there is religious humanism and how that helped create secular humanism. I don't know. It's a little muddled, but it's an interesting topic. So I'll just start there. Generally, my poll question, if I had made it, was, how would you personally define humanism, and do you recognize yourself as one? So let's go first.
I mean, yeah, I say I am one. I guess the way I would define it is it's humanism, so it would be like a worldview, I guess. So it's the worldview that human problems need to be solved by humans, and we should work towards the betterment and wellness of society. That's my slapped together, I just thought of it at this moment, definition.
That's fair. I appreciate you, Ellen.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. The work towards the betterment of society. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm a humanist as well.
I think it has to be like the betterment of society for the wellness of humans, because you might say the betterment of society is to get rid of all the people who don't work so that everyone else can do better and we don't have to worry about them, and that's definitely not human.
Well, in that case, now you're just putting class over each other, right? Because you can make arguments of who is more functional in society than others. Yeah. Is that really humanistic?
That's what I'm saying.
Part of the goal should probably
be just betterment of society. You might say, well, there's certain people who would not do better, who are not being helpful in society, so let's just get rid of those people who aren't helpful. Now you can determine what that is. I'm sure some people would say, let's just get rid of all the criminals. Some people would say, let's get rid of all the murderers. There's ways to see that, but it's like wellness of society. It's like, okay, if these people can be rehabilitated, we'll put in the effort to do that, even if it means it will take longer than just, or it's harder than just locking them away for the rest of their life.
Okay.
Yeah, I think utilitarianism is, both good and bad. It can be potentially a big issue in society if we derive our solutions strictly from that. Like I say, in betterment of society, but that could mean a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of horrible things that people would do if in the name of improving society or improving, the cleanliness of our country or the gene pool or, just whatever it may be. So it's important to kind of figure out where you stand as far as, do you want to help everybody, even potential people, or, just try to create the most perfect society that there could be.
Or just do the most good.
Right. I mean, but there's a lot of ways to interpret that, and
it's also what you say, what society
implement
is,
that.
Because,
yeah.
Because what if all the rich people decide we're going to make our own closed off society and we're going to make it a utopia and just let everyone else fester away. And it's like, well, in our society, it's great, and we got innovation and good food and whatever. It's like those people, they're outside of society, they're somewhere else. But if it's like focus on humans as a whole, then it's kind of less about like what society is. And it's just like humans in general. Like, I mean, I don't know if this like it says humanism, so it's kind of like this idea of focused on humans. I don't know if it's better to try to like keep it more on the like betterment of the world in general, because like, you know, if humans have better outcomes, the world kind of gets better, because a lot of the issues with like say climate change, they're saying like, well, some of these like poorer countries, they can't necessarily get all solar powered and everything because they just don't have the infrastructure, and they would actually need all that oil and stuff first because we were able to do it that way. They need to have their time to do it, but we're like, no, we can't use that. We gotta get all green first. And they're like, well, we can't. We just don't have the ability to do that. But it's still, you know, we need to better society so it gets better overall, because, you know, the richer countries are able to get green and be a little bit better. And that's one example.
What were you saying, Justin?
I don't remember anymore, but I do want to say that the fact that humanism, or secular humanism, religious humanism, is so the interpretations of it, the solutions of the implementation of it is so personal, and so it varies so widely, is one of the biggest tools used against it from people arguing from different worldviews, especially religious people. They're saying, well, all of your ethics and morality is, you kind of just make it up, or it's subjective. We can't agree on things. It's not grounded in anything. If it's not objective, how do you say who's right and who's wrong? But I think as people that identify as secular humanists, or kind of go into the view of secular morality, if you look at the talks on like the superior secular morality and or the moral landscape type books and talks, there's almost intentionally that's nothing is objective other than the idea that we want to improve human well-being and human flourishing. And that's kind of like the thing that grounds it, is we care about other humans, and we recognize that we have to offer human solutions to these, to improving our lives.
Right. But even believers take that a bit more of a stretch. They'll say, okay, first, your idea of morality is not grounded because you don't believe in God. And then based off what you just said, oh, well, I just want to do good because of the people around me. And then they're like, well, but that's not grounded in anything. Like, you're just making that subjective or personal to yourself.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead. Where the goal itself is subjective, because we don't have someone who's saying the goal is to do X. Like, you know, God's goal might be that everyone is Christian and you have as many children as possible until Armageddon. Like, okay, that's his goal. So we can but once you figure out what the goal is, you can do objective decisions on, you can find objective like answers to, will this action contribute to the goal versus this action. It's not like each action is subjective in itself. If your goal is to, you know, increase flourishing, will preventing one whole half of the society, like everyone who was born with a uterus, would preventing them from doing anything help society as a whole? No, because a lot of them might be doctors or like inventors or just be able to do all the different things. But if you're saying no, you can't because of an arbitrary reason, you know, that doesn't help flourishing. So you can say, okay, based on our goal, doing this is not going to be helpful. But if your goal is to follow the Bible, then yeah, then everyone with the uterus doesn't do anything except have children. And that's just what the Bible says. And if that's the goal, then that's the goal. And that's an objective way to do that goal.
Yeah, I think the question is, why should somebody? So I think we can agree that secular humanism, the title, the label, kind of gives us that common starting point, right? That, you know, But the question is why? Why should somebody care about that? What's telling them to care about that? We point to evolution as a social species being the driving force that kind of that tells us to care about each other, and then we feel like we have empathy, and we have like altruistic actions and ideas and stuff. But not everybody accepts that this is like that evolution has a goal, or this is, evolution is telling everybody to do this, because it's clearly not. So the idea is, why should somebody be a humanist or a secular humanist? I dropped something.
One thing that's brought up is the idea of one is the it's selfish altruism or whatever. It's like, would you want to live in a world where you could be like randomly robbed in the middle of the street? Like, just thinking about yourself only. Would you want to live in a world where you're randomly robbed in the middle of the street? No. So you'd want to, contribute. You'd want to have a society where that's not the case. And you think, okay, what contributes to people robbing people? Poor education, poor job stuff. So you can think of it just in like a very selfish way. Like, would I want more people to be educated and know how to be rational and critical thinking, or would I want them to just follow their gut and do whatever they think is right? Well, you might want that. You might want one over the other because you think it's better. And then you could also, or you can think of it as like, you could be slightly less selfish, where you think, okay, I have, say I'm a man, but I have a daughter. Would I want her to be able to be a doctor if she wants to? Okay, yes, I want my daughter to be able to succeed. I don't want her to be stuck. So that means, what would I have to do to make it so my daughter can do that? More education for women, not trying to force her to do something she doesn't want to do. And then there's so many reasons from being selfish to just being like, what, I live in a society. I want the society to be the best because I don't like seeing people suffer, because I have empathy for the people around me.
Okay, that's fair. But when it comes down to religious humanism, I don't know. This one's a bit confusing to me, because
it just sounds like it's be nice to humans because God said so. That's what it kind of just sounds like to me. So you're like, God is the good person who said be nice to humans, so I'll be nice to humans because God said so.
Right.
It could be that straightforward, but I don't believe that. Just based on just the, I don't know. I think they hold regard to human need and interests, and the abilities of human to, survive and prosper and live on and things like that. I don't think it's just plainly straight, we're doing this because God said so, because to my understanding, with some religious humanists, it's not necessarily pulling it from any type of theology. It's just broadly, I don't know, they attribute what is given to them by a metaphysical being, but they're not necessarily gathering their, I don't know, ideas on being a humanist from one particular text.
Well, I think the broad idea of that is, if there's a creator and created the universe, created the earth, and in some way or another, through intelligent design or evolution or whatever it may be, created humans, and at the end of the day, we're all God's creations, and so we should hold each other of equal value and value one another inherently, and that's kind of where some of that stems from. And the biggest difference between like a more conservative Christian or somebody who believes in miracles and this and that is the humanist part says, we're not going to wait for God to fix things. We're not going to wait for, we don't just assume that people are being harmed because they did bad things. It's we have these problems, we're presented with these issues, and we have to find real, pragmatic solutions to them, rather than waiting or hoping for divine intervention.
Okay.
Well, the two things are secular humanism versus religious humanism. And so, they have the humanism thing down, but what's the difference? One is they don't have something to, base it on, because they just decide, as a society, we're going to try to do better because it's how society gets better. And this is the society I live in, so I want it to be better. You know, it could be that selfish, or this is the society all people I care about live in, so I want them, you know. But then religious, it just sounds like God has dictated it somehow. Like whether because God created us and we want to honor God's creation, therefore we will be nice. It's always the kind of that underlying, the reason we do this is because God, somehow.
No, I see your point.
Neighbor.
Right.
But
God wants us to love our neighbor.
Yeah. Well, at one point in time, a few years back, I had a neighbor, but we won't talk about that.
Plead the fifth. Do you have that?
Okay.
Do you have the Fifth Amendment in Canada?
No.
That's totally different. Well, okay. Well, I'm sorry you no longer have a neighbor to love anymore, Ɩnternational. But hey, that's okay.
I think one of the reasons why a lot of former Christians, especially former Christian activists, end up as secular humanists is because a lot of people deconvert, and on that path is like Unitarianism and these more let's only talk about the good, happy, nice things about religion and you know, Jesus loves little children type stuff. So when they get into these, they kind of let go of all of the they let go of the more hateful ideas and and you know, but the church, that particular church kind of like build off of that, like let's attract the people who just want to be nice to each other, and we'll only talk about the good reasons to be nice to each other. And when they finally fully deconvert, that's kind of what's left, is just the being nice to each other part, just for the sake of, you know, you're a human, I'm a human, let's do better together.
There was a small portion right before I just became an atheist that, you know, that a whole idea of Unitarianism seemed much better, obviously, because just as you said, it highlights the goodness of the Bible.
It takes away some of the biggest problems, like the problem of evil, and morality and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's actually a church, maybe not 20 miles from me, not that far, that I started to look into going to before I just totally let it go altogether. I may have like thought on it for like a couple weeks and then left the idea, but I like the fact that their pastor was a woman and she had a partner who was a woman, and you know, they seemed to be very wholesome and nice, and the website was nice, and I was like, okay, nice website, nice place, okay, cool. It just seemed, obviously the appeal on the surface was good, but you know, as you said, sure, they'll dive into the Bible and say all the good stuff, but I mean, my regular church does that all the time. Here and there says bad things, but only to their benefit of, you know, going against the whole secular world entirely. But, you know, you really are chopping away what a believer should theoretically be following wholeheartedly, if they have such a belief and if they trust in, you know, being their religious book as God breathed, whomever their God is. So, but I wanted to also touch on if any of you are familiar with the Humanist Manifesto. Have heard of it at all?
I've heard of it. I didn't read it.
I haven't read it.
It's basically, it's been rewritten at least 3 times. The initial one was started early 1900s, early 1900s. It bridged from it being from a group of religious humanists, then rewritten or updated, I guess you could say, in like 1970s by actual secular humanism, and then added more to it somewhere in the mid to late 2000s. So I guess there are, and it makes sense. I don't have a problem with it being updated, because as cultures evolve, as we evolve as people, as time changes, as styles and things update, you need updates on text. You need updates on ideas or new perspectives and things like that. So I'm not bothered by that at all. But I found it interesting how it all, came about. I think some of the points from it kind of narrows, I forget how many there are, roughly maybe close to 20. There are these not necessarily rules, but like frameworks in which you could recognize yourself as a humanist. Like for one, religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. 2, humanism believes that man is a part of nature and that he has emerged as a result of continuous process. And there are other things that they kind of list and so on and so forth. So, I mean, to just bring me to my question, does any of this matter? Does it matter to you?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, if I'm not following all of these tenets to the letter, I'm not a human. But also, you don't have to. It's not like you have to read it in order to, make sure that you're a humanist. Like I've never read it, and I would like to think that I'm a humanist. I think maybe I've heard it. I think maybe Matt or somebody recited it on a show or something, and maybe went over it, but I just don't remember. If that's happened, I just don't remember each tenet.
I think it's important for some people to be really familiar with it and read it and kind of disseminate the ideas in a easily digestible way. But like myself, if I had to label myself in any way, it would be as a secular humanist. But I don't know all the tenets. I don't know the philosophy. I don't know all the in and outs. Or if every action or every idea is in line with that. It's just that what I know of it and what I've heard of it from people that I trust to be good sources on the ideas of it, I agree with those. Not necessarily always 100% of following them, but that seems to be, as far as I can tell, insofar the best path forward for the most people. But I don't know that anybody, not anybody. I don't know that we all have enough time to where these, we can be up to date and really fully understand these things and expect other people to fully understand them and say, oh, you can't be part of my club if, you haven't read this and, know it word for word or something like that. And that's what makes religion so easy to spread, is that you don't have to know everything about it. Some people do, and some sects, they require you to be that thorough with it. But for the most part, they just say, if you agree with these few core tenets, then you're part of the group.
I think it might be helpful for people who are really having a struggle trying to figure out what their morality is after some sort of religion. It's just kind of if you're just kind of totally stuck and you have no idea what to think, you might be like, all right, take these tenets and just read them over, not dogmatic, but read these are kind of the ideas of humanism, read them over and what do you think? And it's kind of instead of it being this whole big, you have to just think about it yourself, man, and contemplate your society for it. It's just all right, here are these things people wrote down, read them over. Does it make sense to you? Do you think you agree with this? Do you think doing these things, it kind of gives a roadmap for just people to kind of figure it out while they're in the death throes of their religious upbringing?
I guess you can simply say it's a helpful bridge stemming from religion into letting go of belief all entirely.
It could be. I mean, there's people that, and I don't know how widespread that is, but I've definitely talked to people and we've seen it. People that kind of fall into nihilism, where if there's no divine plan, then nothing matters. What's the point? Why am I here? Type stuff. And that if your entire identity and everything you've ever thought about was wrapped up into this divine plan, it's kind of easy to see how you can go from that to, well, nothing matters. So it just offers a way to, if you do happen to care about other people, to have a shared plan or a shared guideline on how to help one another.
It grounds you while you're still trying to figure things out, and then once you're once you're like, all right, I have an idea, then you can actually think about things and try to figure it out. Because I think one thing is people are like, oh, atheism's not going to rise as much and we're always going to have theism. It's like, well, we might, but even if theism doesn't go down a lot, humanism and like secular humanism is going up. Because like, I'm sure most of the people in like my office are theists, but like if you really had a, if you had to like quiz them and they had to tell the truth, and you put them like humanism versus religious doctrine, a lot of them would probably follow the humanist stuff, or they would, or if you like, you know, told them to explain their morality, probably a lot of it would be like humanism based anyway. And I feel like there's a lot, like if you took every single person in the entire United States and not just the loudest people, probably a lot of them would follow generally humanist traits. Rather than,
but they don't claim it. So I mean, even the people. So when you come across somebody who's like religious, you know, theistic, and it goes to church and part of the conservative parties and blah blah blah, the ones that are like very nice, they check out most of the book. They don't, you know, they're like, oh, you know, can't we all just get along and help one another, yada yada. But those people still identify with, you know, conservative churches or conservative parties, or they would never, you know, identify as a secular humanist or a religious humanist, because they just don't know that that's like a thing that exists into itself, rather than a smaller group of this bigger identity.
Right. I don't think the majority of believers and non-believers really attest or understand fully any of what it means to be a humanist. They just, in simple terms, recognize that, oh, well, I should just do good by everyone, and that's it. And that's perfectly fine, whether you have a God belief or not, whether you even attribute that goodness of yourself because you believe there is a God or not. Doesn't matter. The fact that you're doing more good for society as a whole, whomever your neighbor is, or lack thereof a neighbor, then, you know, just be good and kind to Multi, because he is a humanist and we should humanize Multi. Good evening, sir.
Hello.
Multi, I'm going to give you advice. Don't move next door to ʻOllieman.
That's all you need to know. No context. That's it.
He will not be nice.
Do not move next to ʻOllieman. He has no neighbors for a reason.
I have lots of neighbors.
Where? How close are they?
Well,
not for long.
Actually, I got new neighbors moving in across the street. We'll have to see what happens.
Love thy neighbor, ʻOllieman. Wow. Okay. Multi, I know I kind of threw you in the ringer there, and I still will. How would you classify yourself? Are you a humanist? Do you recognize yourself as a humanist? Do you know what that means? So many questions.
Yeah, I would say so. A sentientist is maybe a little bit ill-defined for me to really grab on to, but a secular humanist, yeah. I go with how does it go? My skeptical, rational humanist. So my atheism comes from my skepticism. My humanism comes from, or my I think the rational skeptic part is what makes me an atheist and a humanist.
How do you think being a skeptic or a rational skeptic leads one to be a humanist?
Good question.
I don't necessarily see the connection.
I think it helps you. It helps you if I think you have to identify as a humanist, and then being a skeptic helps you achieve that goal, because you could be like someone who you might think you're a humanist and you're going to do things that you think are better for people. Like, say you think that, you know, buying a bunch of magic rocks for people is going to make everyone feel better. That's not very skeptical, but it is humanist. You're trying to make people better, but if you really want to actually do something that helps society, you got to be like skeptical about it. But you can be skeptical about things but still be an asshole to everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some other innate trait, something along the lines of skepticism, but in a different realm, that will lead to that, or they work together.
Yeah, I mean, is it part of the tribalism
seeing tribalism, but seeing it in a wider sense, in a kind of socialism kind of sense. In that, so that's what kind of prompts the humanism. If having a gyre of plastic the size of Texas out in the Pacific is not good for anyone, right? So maybe I can just not take the plastic straws, right? Because I know it's going to end up there in 20 years.
It's not good for you, but whoever created that is good for them. So you can't, and it's bridging to what I'm trying to say is that whatever is good to you that you think would be good unto someone else will not be good to them. So who is the arbiter of what should be good in society as a whole?
Society.
Well, I mean, they're trying to get rid of the plastic straws, right? And Q-tips and plastic Q-tips and the disposable one-time plastic things. I think we've all come to understand, hopefully most of the civilized world has come to understand that this is a losing proposition. The convenience is not convenient anymore.
I mean, that's fair. I appreciate my sippy cup when I go to Starbucks. The lemon. I think perhaps the reason religious people don't identify as humanists is because they already perceive themselves to have a label, their religiosity, that already supposes their morality.
Yep, I can see that.
Yeah. So I mean, they would. I can see how identifying as a Christian or whatever type of Christian that may be is basically the highest form of goodness in their world.
Their worldview,
and the label that sums up, all the good that they do or could do or that anybody needs. And if everybody was just the same as them, then everybody would flourish.
Fair. And Multi, you'll probably need to fight Stitics because he always forgets his metal straws. Bad Stitics. Like, come on.
I'm the same. Like, I've been given like 50 different
make the world better
straws, and I have just never used them ever because I just forget to have them and I forget that they exist. The one time I remembered them, I didn't have them, so I had to get the plastic straw anyway.
Have you all heard of the circle of empathy?
That sounds familiar, but not fully.
No. So the circles of empathy. So it's basically a circle chart. I don't really know how to describe it, but in the middle, there's self. I'm looking at it now. Then family, friends, neighbors, community, nation, and strangers. So basically, it's as the circle expands, you get further and further away from yourself. So you care about yourself the most, and then your family, friends, community, yada yada.
Right.
So it's.
The number of people dying in Peru and Bolivia right now it's terrible, but it's a little bit different than Aunt Jean, who's in Wisconsin.
Right. Gotcha. So it's highly likely that nobody in the stream or watching is basically thinking of all the people that are starving or being murdered or dying in a building collapsing right now. It's just not within their circle of empathy. But one of the thoughts that I had on that is as resources become more available and our insights on what it becomes, what is harmful becomes, better and better over the years through technology and awareness, we're just more aware of what's going wrong in the world. And we're aware of what resources are available to fix it. And we are also, even among the poorest people, are accruing more resources to keep themselves and their immediate family and friends alive, which wasn't always the case. And so that your ability to care about more people, that's the bigger and bigger circle is just getting bigger over time.
And I know the kind of that circle of empathy is like, that's kind of the one thing that it like if anyone ever heard of effective altruism, it's like this movement of people who they're like an organization. They like did a study into like what actually helps people and how to best actually use your money or time to better society. But one of the interesting things about it, which I think like would draw people away from it if they didn't really like understand it, was that they have like these types of charities that you should be giving to, and they're like the best ones because they would help society the most. There's like this weird formula they have where it's like it's the most help, the most good for the least amount of money sort of thing. But they're really like niche things. They're like deworming of these people in Africa. It's like nets for these people here, and it's like stuff like that. And you're like, it sounds like I'm just kind of doing the bare bones of like helping just these people. Like, what about the people in my country who need help? And, you know, maybe it's like, well, no, this is focusing on doing the best for people who need it the most. Like,
people in Africa need much more than people in downtown LA on Skid Row.
We hear that all the time, and in American politics is, you know, let's take care of our homeless veterans and our homeless people before we give money to other countries.
And you're like, no offense, but your homeless veterans, like, they're not in the best circumstances, but like for the most part, they're not like starving on the streets. Like they can find places to find food. Like there's charities.
And some of them are for various reasons, but there's a lot of people in the world with a lot of problems, and you know we're of this mentality of, I don't care how much money we have, even though it's just fiat money, it doesn't really mean anything anymore. I don't care how much resources we have or anything. Let's only take care of our people first.
And that's that nation versus strangers thing you were talking about with those circles. It's like if we make the lowest people in all of society, the ones in like the worst poverty, better, it just kind of lifts everybody else, because all those people in poverty, if they're not starving, they're able to do their farming, or they're able to innovate, or they're able to do jobs, and that just helps the economy in general. And some of it is like, a lot of it's health stuff. They're like, if these people aren't stricken by blindness, they're able to feed their families through jobs or just being caretakers, etc. If these people aren't dying from worming things, or whatever, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like worms and stuff, they can better society. But like that doesn't have the emotional impact of like, I just took this veteran off the street and we, you know, gave him a haircut and made him into a new person, and now he's a productive member of society, and I helped with that because I was right there and able to see it all happen, as opposed to, I'll just give like $500 to these people and they'll give money to these people I'll never meet, probably never see, and they will probably never interact with, and I'll never hear about them again, but their lives will improve.
You could easily see a GoFundMe or something like that raising $1 million for a homeless veteran, and it would go over really well. Nobody would ask a single question about it. But if they raise $1 million to help 1,000 people overseas, it would just be criticized all over the media.
Yeah,
because it's going to take, how much money did it take to actually went overseas? The administration costs will be scrutinized, all of that. Or is it you have to help those in the closer circles before you help those in the outer circles?
Well,
in your pie chart?
I mean, yeah. And I get that to some extent, where, especially when we're talking about veterans. I'm a veteran. So if we don't take care of your veterans, you're going to have less people that appreciate that role, and less people wanting to do that role of defending the country. So if you kind of devalue that role in that position, then nobody will do it, and then people are afraid that we'll become a third world country pretty much and just get overrun by Canadians or something. I have no idea.
We're coming for you.
Take us. We'll take the free healthcare.
So that's kind of
make it as far as snowballs. We'll make it as far as we can use snowballs before they start melting.
So that's kind of the mentality that one veteran or one service member is more valuable than basically unlimited of people that are not Americans.
That's that whole concentric circle things. Like you would, if your brother needs $1,000, but instead you spend the $1,000 to save 100 people in Africa, you're considered a terrible person because you didn't help your brother. And it's like, but I just helped 100 people in Africa. It's like, it doesn't matter. You didn't help your brother. And it's like, oh, okay. That's kind of where that, like, part of the issue with being like skeptical but not humanist. It's like, well, if we can just help the most people but not help, people enough, sort of thing. I don't know.
So to take it from the abstract to the very personal, I have a niece who told me point blank in during a time of high emotional stress that she would never want to talk to me again. Please do not contact me again, or without the please, and maybe with a fucking in there. Now my aged mother is pressuring me to contact her. She's doing so much better now. That was a really tough time. And I say, Mom, if you're in contact with her and this is something that you want, then you tell her that you would like her to be in touch with me. I mean, I'm trying to do what my niece is asking. I'm trying to respect her wishes. And however, I also want her to understand that I also still consider her family and want to be supportive. However, if she's going to be abusive, then I'm not going to be there. And that's what I had seen before. Unfortunately, she was raised in an abusive household, and that's one of the ways that she knows how to interact with people. Or did. I haven't talked to her in a while. Since just probably a year after my sister died is when that was the last time I was able to have contact. So I don't know what to do to be a good humanist in that case. What do you, any suggestions, any thoughts?
I don't know, Malty. I'm kind of in the same spot with my cousin. He got in a big uproar with the family and basically cut off the entire family. He doesn't want to talk to any of us. And honestly, his reasons for it are not good. But you can't talk any sense into him because he's not willing to even communicate. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's still their autonomy and everything to, if they don't want to interact with you can't force them to, because if we wanted to, we could just force people to be nice to each, into these situations. Like, it could be this, I know this isn't the same, but it's like, if you know what resulted in her, how she is, like finding a proxy, like, giving money or time to something similar to try to prevent that situation from happening in the future might be a proxy. But that's the way I think about it. Like if somebody in my family passed away, if someone in my family passed away and they were really into I don't know, a certain youth group or something, then if I really wanted to honor their memory or something, then maybe it's, doing that. Or if I know that the reason some family is cut off is because they were abused and they don't want to deal with the family that's even associated with it, then I would maybe try to do something to help with other people who might be facing that, since I can't interact with those people and do anything to help with that. But that's just my thought.
I think overall it's just her burden to bear.
Yeah.
And if you yourself, Multi, recognize that you did not do anything to harm said person, say anything to hurt their feelings, did anything intentional or unintentional to have them approach you in such a way that just blatantly wants them for you to distance themselves, then there's only so much you can do for a person that you want to reach out to. Now, of course, in your mother's case of wanting for such and such person to get in contact with them, maybe someone else needs to do it. That shouldn't be your responsibility.
I think you made the right decision when you said that you were respecting her wishes. She did say not to contact her. And is it your mother that wants you to contact her, or is it her through your mother that wants to contact her?
No,
it's your mother. Yeah,
it's definitely my mother.
I think you made the right decision. Look, Mom, and explain that to your mother. She asked me not to contact her, so you need to tell her that if she does want contact, she has to initiate it. I think that's the right way to handle it.
I think we finally got to a point. So last time I talked to her, Mom, that is, we went over some paperwork for power of attorney and her end of life choices, her DNR. And she wants me to be that executor. And I'm like, okay, Mom, you trust me to be the person, if you're incapacitated, that is going to honor your wishes. That's what you're asking me to do by signing this paperwork, right? And when I brought it that, and can you see the similarities is what I asked her between these, and she said no, and then kind of. And so I think I'm whittling it away at it and trying to get her to understand. But I did get her to accept the responsibility that this is her wishes, and so if she wants it to happen, then just bugging me to make it happen is not the correct way to go about it. That she needs to be actively proactive on this.
And that's respectable, and that's perfectly fine. And it removes the added, I should say, burden from you. And like I said, with your niece, that's just her burden to bear, whether she chooses to remain and disconnect with you or not. But just bridging all of that of just personal choice, having that bodily autonomy, doing the most good, because in this situation for you, Multi, you're doing the most good as to honoring your niece's wishes, and that's that. Then, that's it. But wow. Thank you all. That was a very good discussion.
I didn't even say anything.
Kelly, you said enough. You said enough, Kelly. And you'll say more tomorrow night anyway. So
I guess I will, yeah. I'll have a chance to anyway.
Yes. And please all.
I won't have all these great minds to compete with. So
what's going on?
Great minds.
I know what's going on. I know what's going on.
Great minds. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that, but no. If chat, if you haven't already subscribed to A&E podcast for the atheist community of Austin, or at least to Truth Wanted, our dear Kelly will be a featured guest there. So, by all means, call into the show tomorrow when it airs for Truth Wanted, and ask Kelly some questions. Surprise him with some woo crystal mumbo jumbo. Challenge him to a crystal duel. I don't know how.
Get all your woo friends to call me.
I want you to research why Jim Carrey, or not Jim Carrey. I can't think of his name. No, not Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey played him in the movie Man in the Moon. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Comedian. Never mind.
Laka Gravis.
Yeah.
No.
Andy
his name off Taxi.
Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, that was his character's name on Taxi. Was Laka Gravis.
That's right. So Andy Kaufman, he died of cancer, right? But he was attempting crystal magic and stuff like that at the end to try and cure it. So find out why that didn't work for me.
You'll go anywhere in desperation, right?
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to that crystal magic discussion. But Justin, just some final points that you wanted to make.
I wanted to address a couple of the comments. I just wanted to make a comment about them. One of them was this one here. Part of the problem is with the 1,000 people overseas is that thing where people have a hard time relating to large numbers of people. So the circle of empathy is one part of that, but then there's also something called compassion fade or collapse of compassion. And it's a way to, it's a shortcut to managing our emotions so that we don't get overwhelmed. So if one person dies in a tragedy, it becomes like a national event. People care, resources get poured into it. But if 1,000 people die, or 10,000 people, or 3 million in the case of COVID, we're just sitting here talking about other things as if that's not happening, where thousands of people are just dying every day still from it, right?
Even more presently, right? Sorry.
It kind of just fades away into the background. And part of that is because if every person cared constantly about every person that was affected by this, you would be frozen. You wouldn't be able to do anything. There's like subconscious mental shortcuts that kind of turn off that empathy without your input from it.
Bridging a more recent example before you dial into your other point was, the collapse of that apartment building in Florida. All of those people that they're still trying to discover bodies or anyone who has survived. Like, I constantly see updates and reports about it, but I mean, I'm not glued to my couch and just like mourning the loss and just crying all day and night. Like, not trying to downplay the people that are mourning and missing said people, but obviously I have no connection to that. I'm assuming most of us in this channel have no connection to that.
Every conversation that I see revolving that is the failure of the owners and the association and the board on getting the building fixed and how much it would have cost and this and that. Like, almost nobody's talking about this firefighter that, you know, was there when they pulled his daughter from the rubble, or, you know, his wife was there next to her. It's just overwhelming, you know.
Oof, yeah.
And so we changed the conversation to something that's easier to deal with, of, you know, who to blame, how do we fix this the next time, and how do we do things better, or whose fault it is. But if it was somebody that you knew, somebody that died, say, in a motorcycle accident with no helmet on, you wouldn't be blaming them for not wearing a helmet, or you wouldn't, you know, you might not you might not hear every single conversation revolving around, oh, the speed limit should have been better, or there should have been better lighting, or the car should have been looking out. You know, it would be a lot of mourning. That's just one thing I wanted to bring up, and you know, it's nobody's fault. It's just that when we start talking about humanism and what is your role, there's only so much you can do as an individual. And like Stitics said in the chat, it's an idea, it's a goal to work towards, but we have to have discussions and communication of how to best implement these things, and not just say, here's our manifesto, here's the rules, go do it, or else you're not part of the club. You know, these are complicated issues, and we can only do and deal with so much individually, even if we want to do more.
Different. No, and you're right. It should just not be just, okay, follow this. You know, just thinking about it is essentially what a believer would do, or should do if they read their book enough, is follow this text and go about your day following this guideline. That's it.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is the Lemon Plan devil's advocate about, you know, the government's responsibility is their own people first, pay taxes, fight wars. And that's true. But I think that you can kind of dive into a much, much more complicated situation here where, you know, if you do trust your government to protect you, no matter who you ask, no matter what their political grouping, libertarian, conservative, liberal, one of the primary purposes of a government is to protect its citizens. And that's usually with a military and through smart economic moves, and creating, you know, friendly trade partnerships and all this and that with other countries. But then you can kind of get more into that of, you know, if your government is going to be able to do that, you have to pay taxes. You have to be part of the group. You have to be part of the economy so that they can provide these resources to you. But when you start talking about humanism, you have to start talking about, well, what if the government that I support, that I want to support me, is actually accruing, you know, more than their fair share of resources throughout the world, and we have extra, or we have the ability to disseminate those to other people. And then you start getting into the conversation of, well, if I give away this much and then it takes away from us, and then we get into this point where we can't support our own government, which can't support us. And then you start getting into these big scenarios of, you know, this is how such and such government fell, and the fall of Rome, and blah, blah, blah. So it's not like really black and white of let's just distribute things evenly, because there's no structure, there's no government that can help everybody. And even on a country level, there's no country that can help everybody in its country that I know of. But we do know that resources are distributed unevenly. Right. But we can't agree on how to best distribute those. You know, most people would want to help other people, but they want to help themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I think it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you for that. Yes. And those two comments, actually, I got lost in them because everything else in the conversation just kept compounding on itself. But I appreciate the chat for chiming in and all their perspectives and ideas. It helps, not only just myself to understand more and learn more, but just gain different perspectives, from people that live their lives differently, but still recognize themselves as good people. You're all good people, each and every one of you. And you.
Yeah, you don't have to be a secular humanist to be a good people.
There you go.
That's true.
You don't have to be a secular humanist to be a good people. Quote of the night. Thank you, Justin.
You could be a selfish altruist. Was it that you said? Yeah, I love that. That was awesome.
Yeah,
or
I think that's probably what I am.
Just don't be an objectivist who is somebody that would probably identify as selfish altruist, but it's not the same.
No.
Words and terms.
Yeah, it's essentially, I care about myself, and since I live in society and I want the people around me to not be terrible, I will do what I can to make society better so that these people are not terrible to me.
Fair. Yes.
Around something like that.
Thank you, crew. Thank you, chat. We will turn ourselves over to the disc.
This is secular humanism.
You're not fucking true. You are trying. Stitics. Thank you, Stitics. Well, we'll move on. We'll mosey on over to the Discord. Actually, as for next week, we are not on next week because I will be busy and Justin wants to sleep. So we will not be on next week. It's mostly because I'm busy. I tease him. My sister's getting married next weekend, so I'm just going to be all in the mix. Yay.
Yeah, holy we're taking over and we're having a D&D session, right, Jena?
Oh boy.
Sure. Talk to Justin. Talk to Justin.
Give me the link.
Give me the link. So we're not on next week. We will be back on the following week, which should be pretty much the start of August. I have some guests lined up in August, which include Normalizing Atheism and Brute Fast podcasts. I will have them both on once they settle on a date for Thursday in August to have a mutual civil discussion on philosophy. It should be interesting. So I'll dive back with you. Also, a friend of the show, Crash the Party, also known as Nate Game. He's done some pretty interesting interviews with popular names like Todd Newton, the host with the most, if you ever seen like his game shows that he's hosted. And just recently he was on with Killer Priest. He interviewed him. He's one of the Wu-Tang Clan. So, and he drives his own content, things like that. So we'll have him on the show as well once we settle on the date in August. But next week, no us. So do something else with your time. I'm sorry. That wasn't nice. I'm sorry.
Play a board game. Say hello to your dog. Pet your sibling, and don't slap any cats.
Don't slap any cats. Got it. No slapping of the pussies. Okay. Kelly, we'll see you on tomorrow night.
This isn't secular sexuality, but...
And then, Multi, you are going to be on the Nonprofits episode this weekend. Are you not, sir?
I am.
Yep.
I am.
You are.
It'll be a great episode with myself and a crew of... Who all was there? Let me think.
Christy Powell from Secular Sexuality.
Oh, yeah.
That
Arden.
was the guest. Arden of Eden.
Yeah, yeah.
And Cynthia.
And Cynthia to round out the mix.
That's a good body of folk.
It's a good body. It's the best body I've ever seen.
Yes, I am conducting on that episode, Stitics.
Justin, don't laugh at me. Yes, you are. What? What did I say?
Jenna's just admiring all their bodies.
I'm just admiring the bodies.
Just admiring the body.
Okay. Especially if you have big boobs. All right. Well, we'll see you guys in the Discord. Thank you so much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Did you say Malty has big boobs?
I did not say that.
No,
I did not say that.
We're implying it. End the show.
I'm going to end the show because Justin's going to kill me. All right. Have a good night. See you in Discord. Bye.
Bye, everyone.